Welcome to the Horror Mansion, a place where every shadow hides a story, and every door leads to fear.
The year is 1888. The city is London, foggy, gaslit Victorian streets at night. A sprawling, magnificent metropolis, the heart of the largest empire the world has ever known. It is a time of immense progress. Industry booms, science marches forward. But you know, beneath the veneer of Victorian prosperity, there lies a darker world, a world of poverty, despair, shadows. In the East End, the gas lamps struggle to pierce the thick, choking smog. They cast a weak, sickly glow on crowded streets, revealing a reality far removed from the grand halls of Westminster. Here, life is cheap, and it is about to get much cheaper for some. No one knew it at the time. No one could have predicted the chilling events that were about to unfold. Londoners went about their daily lives, oblivious to a monstrous presence beginning to stir. In overpopulated, squalid Whitechapel, the daily struggle for survival was the only monster most people knew. They feared hunger. They feared the workhouse. They feared the cold of the coming winter. They had no reason to look over their shoulders for a phantom in the dark, a human predator who would soon turn their mean streets into a slaughterhouse. This period would later be given a name that still sends a shiver down the spine. It would be called the Autumn of Terror. It began subtly, with whispers of violence common in the slums. But soon, the violence took on a new, horrifying character. A level of brutality unprecedented. A cold, calculated savagery that spoke of more than simple crime. It was the work of a fiend, a ghost who could strike with impunity and vanish into the night, leaving only bloodshed and a city gripped by paralyzing fear. Whitechapel was a world unto itself, a labyrinth of narrow alleyways, unlit lanes swallowed by fog, tens of thousands crammed into dilapidated tenements. For women without protection, options were stark. Many forced into prostitution on the streets, selling their bodies for a few pennies to afford a bed for the night. A new predator stalked the dark streets. He hunted for the sheer bloody thrill of the kill. The terror began on a cold, dark morning. It was Friday, August 31st, 1888. The victim was a woman named Mary Ann Nichols, known to her friends as Polly. That night, she was turned out of her doss house on Thrall Street because she lacked the fourpence for a bed. She was last seen alive, walking down Whitechapel Road, a solitary figure heading into the abyss. Her body was discovered at approximately 3:40 a.m. in Bucks Row, a dark and quiet street. In the pre-dawn gloom, they could see that her throat had been savagely cut. Polly Nichols's throat had been slashed twice with such force that her head was almost severed from her body. But the killer had not stopped there. Her abdomen had been brutally mutilated with a series of deep, jagged cuts. The murder of Polly Nichols sent a ripple of fear through Whitechapel. The term Whitechapel murder began to appear in the headlines. The Ripper had claimed his first canonical victim. Just 8 days later, the killer struck again. The victim this time was Annie Chapman, a 47-year-old woman. Her body was found shortly before 6 o'clock in the morning in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. A resident of the house, John Davis, was heading to the outhouse when he made the grisly discovery. This time, he had not just slashed at the body. He had performed a grotesque act of surgery. Her uterus had been removed. Parts of her bladder had been removed from the scene. The precision of the incisions suggested the killer possessed significant anatomical knowledge, perhaps the skill of a surgeon or a butcher. It was now clear that the same hand was responsible for both this death and that of Polly Nichols. In the early hours of Sunday, September 30th, the killer would attempt to strike not once, but twice. The first victim was Elizabeth Stride, a 44-year-old Swedish immigrant known as Long Liz. At approximately 1 o'clock in the morning, a man named Louis Diemschutz turned his pony and cart into the gateway of Dutfield's yard. When he dismounted and lit a match, the flickering flame revealed the body of Elizabeth Stride. The killer had been interrupted. Diemschutz had likely frightened him away only moments after the deed was done. Less than an hour after the interrupted murder of Elizabeth Stride, the Ripper found his next victim. The unfortunate woman was Catherine Eddowes. She was released at 1 o'clock in the morning, the very moment Elizabeth Stride was likely being murdered. At 1:45 a.m., PC Edward Watkins walked his beat through Mitre Square. Now he discovered absolute carnage. Her left kidney had been removed. Her face was horribly disfigured. Deep gashes carved her cheeks into a grotesque V shape. A blood-stained piece of Eddowes' apron was found in a Goulston Street doorway. Above it, chalk read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." But on the morning of November 9th, 1888, the city awoke to a scene of butchery so extreme it eclipsed all that had come before. The victim was Mary Jane Kelly. When Bowyer received no answer to his knocking, he peered through a broken window pane next to the door. What he saw inside was a vision from hell. The scene within the small 12-foot square room was not a murder scene, it was an abattoir. Mary Jane Kelly was unrecognizable as a human being. The flesh from her thighs and forehead was placed on the bedside table. Her heart was missing entirely, likely taken by the killer. After this, the murders abruptly stopped. As silently as he had appeared, Jack the Ripper vanished back into the shadows. In the wake of the brutal murders, the full weight of the London Metropolitan Police descended upon Whitechapel. The investigation was led by senior detectives, including Inspector Frederick Aberline. Police methods were rudimentary. Fingerprinting was not yet in use. They had to rely on eyewitness testimony. They were criticized by the press, mocked by the public, hounded by politicians. Letters purporting to be from the killer himself began to arrive. The most famous of these began with the chillingly casual greeting, "Dear Boss." He signed it, "Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." Another even more horrifying piece of correspondence arrived, a small parcel addressed to George Lusk. Inside the box was half of a human kidney. Accompanying it was a crudely written note that began with the words, "From Hell." One of the most prominent was Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher. Shortly after the final murder, Druitt's body was pulled from the River Thames. Another suspect favoured by Inspector Aberline was Surin Klosowski, George Chapman. He was later convicted and executed for poisoning 3 of his wives. Perhaps the most compelling police suspect was Aaron Kosminski. He was known to suffer from severe mental illness and had a deep-seated hatred of women. The list goes on. Michael Ostrog, John Pizer, Lewis Carroll, Prince Albert Victor. Each name adds another layer to the mystery. So, the question is not just who the Ripper was, but why he was never caught. The failure to catch the killer became a catalyst for change, forcing the development of more scientific approaches to crime solving. Dr. Thomas Bond's analysis was a pioneering, if rudimentary, attempt to understand the mind of a murderer. The case also revolutionized police procedures. The idea of collecting physical evidence and analyzing physical evidence started to take root. The murders stopped, but the story was just beginning. Jack the Ripper was arguably the first modern media celebrity serial killer. Guided tours of the Ripper's haunts began to spring up, a morbid form of tourism that, believe it or not, continues to this day. They are now etched into history. They were the unfortunates the Women's Society had forgotten, made tragically famous by the man who ended their lives. The identity of Jack the Ripper remains the greatest unsolved puzzle in the annals of crime. Was he Aaron Kosminski, Montague Druitt, or George Chapman? Or was he someone whose name has never once been spoken? The Autumn of Terror may have ended in 1888, but in our collective imagination, it is an endless season. Jack the Ripper remains at large, forever stalking the dark alleyways of our minds. A chilling reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to haunt us.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share it with your friends.